We've said this for years, that given an unlimited amount of time and an unlimited budget and resources, that we'd actually like to go there ourselves in a spaceship, in a rocket we build ourselves, and come back with a piece of Apollo hardware. But barring that, every test we did on the episode led us to conclude that we actually went there.
That man made it to the moon for the first time, of course, Apollo 11 back in 1969, and then subsequent trips also leading all the way up to Apollo 17. Let's get right to it. There are a lot of people who are familiar, of course, the famous footage, right, of walking on the moon. And I know that you take some of this stuff step by step. The first thing I want to ask you about, because a lot of people question this, is the flag. You know, some people say, that flag looks like it's blowing in the wind, and there is no wind on the moon. What's going on there? Can you guys get to the bottom of that for us?
Well, I mean, we could replicate that circumstance pretty easily. The other team on MythBusters set it up, and you know, it's pretty straightforward. It looks like there's some wind blowing, but the artifacts that you're seeing are perfectly natural.
It turns out that in the vacuum, the weight of the flag, I mean, they gave the flag some weight in order to counter the moon's gravity. The weight of the flag moving in a vacuum, which there's no atmosphere on the moon, meant that it actually remained moving after they've put it down for far longer than people are used to seeing. But as soon as Grant, Carey, and Torrey put their flag into a vacuum chamber, which NASA gave them access to, they got pretty much the identical effect here on Earth.
And that's interesting to point out. I know that you mentioned, Adam, that NASA gave a lot of access to these experiments so that you could do the zero gravity and you could really try to recreate the conditions there. And also on the flag there, it looks like there's some kind of a bar. Is there a horizontal bar there to make sure that the flag stands out as opposed to drooping? Would that also kind of explain why it looks like it's hanging out there?
Yeah, absolutely. It had an arm sticking out from the flagpole, holding the flag outright, so you could actually take a picture of it because NASA knew that there was no wind on the moon.
All right, so there's myth one that you say you busted, in that it's not being blown by the wind, but that's just natural motion from the action there as they move the flag around. The shadows, okay, this is another popular one that conspiracy theorists say, these shadows are all wrong. It looks like there are multiple light sources, and that wouldn't be the case if they were really on the moon. What did you find?
Well, we replicated the moon photograph, the photography of the moon using a miniature, and we used a light on a stand as the sun. And by careful manipulation of the terrain of the moon's surface and the light position, we were able to get exactly the same kinds of shadows that you see on the original footage. It is sort of misleading. It's understandable how somebody could suspect that this was this artifact of the angle of the shadows was wrong, but it's easy to replicate, actually.
I will point out that there is actually some conspiracy theorists saying since our episode aired that we proved the point because we used a single light source. But I'll tell you that from our miniature, we placed that single light source so far away that all the shadows it was casting on our lunar surface were parallel until we decided to make them other than parallel by, as Jamie said, adjusting the terrain. So we were able to get every kind of lighting effect from our shadows that we wanted by adjusting the terrain.
Oh, wow. And it sounds like it was pretty simple for you guys. Another one I want to ask about, and I know that there are tons, so I won't take you through everything, but the footprints and also just the walking motion. I mean, there are some people who've even said, oh, it's just them on the Earth somewhere, you know, on a soundstage or in some setting where they slowed down the walking. But you say that you could recreate it in a zero-gravity chamber.
Yeah, it was interesting to us that it was quite easy to get, say, 95% of the way there with bungee cords and whatnot. But when you look at our footage and look at the original footage of the moonwalk, it's sort of hard to put your finger on what the difference is, but it's there. It's very noticeable. There's a certain kind of thing that happens in weightlessness as far as the way that you move that is almost impossible to replicate perfectly.
Well, this is actually one of my favorite experiments from the show because, you know, there was a statement that it could have been done with bungee cords, and we tried that. We did okay. There was a statement that it could have been done by slowing down the footage from the moon, and those artifacts would start to shoot. The moon footage was just regular footage slowed down, and we tried that as well. And then we flew in the 0G plane, and we flew in it at 1/6 moon gravity, at 1/6 Earth's gravity, which is the moon's gravitational field. And as Jamie said, the bungee and the slowing the film down, it got us kind of there, but the moment we were on the 0G plane, it was like, boop, that was it. It was totally clear that that was the only way you were going to get that effect. Now, that's also, the simple fact is you could actually make sure for yourself that the moon footage was real just by doing some physics equations about how fast things move within the moon's gravitational field. But, of course, watching someone do math on television isn't interesting, so we went to all that trouble to get on the 0G plane.
Yeah, as much as we'd love to watch you doing calculations, what you did was actually more interesting. Hey, listen, I want to ask you just your opinion, because this is not part of the show, but you know, the recent revelation that NASA says they can't find the footage of the Apollo 11 landing, that they seem to have misplaced it somewhere. In fact, somebody had suggested that maybe it got erased because they needed more tape, and they taped right over it. And so now they have been able to get copies from elsewhere around the world, and they're enhancing those or restoring them. You know, this just fuels the whole conspiracy theory that it never happened.
Well, people love a good conspiracy theory. I mean, this one is a classic because you know, this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, technological feat of our age, and you know, that we actually pulled it off so smoothly, at least as far as the American public is concerned. It's totally understandable that people latch on to anything that they can to you know, generate some theory about it.
I also love the fact that, well, you have to imagine the level of competency required to achieve a conspiracy on this level. Requires the complicity of tens of thousands of people. And we've met hundreds of NASA people over the course of doing the show. They would all have to be complicit in maintaining secrecy in this, and yet the conspiracy theorists have no problem going, oh, well, you know, they were incompetent because they erased the tapes. That had to have been another conspiracy. I will also say this is also finally belied by the fact that NASA's got a piece of equipment circling the moon right now, sending back actual images for the first time of some of the Apollo sites on the moon.
And it's not just NASA here that we're talking about. I believe India and China. There are a number of satellites that are orbiting the moon. India, in particular, was mapping the exact landing locations, which were, by the way, six actual landings that we made there. It's kind of, you could kind of go there with one and say, you know, say whatever you want, but we've been there 6 times. Give us a break.
But you know, conspiracy theorists will always find a way to explain everything. In fact, it's amazing the numbers. At one point, I think it was about 6% of Americans, according to one poll, this was a couple decades ago, that believed this was a hoax. And now that number is in the double digits, apparently, at least according to one poll, of people who say, I don't think we ever did it. I think that was all staged. What about you guys? Have you gotten reaction, because I know that the special episode has aired, to people saying, hey, this changed my mind. I didn't think it really happened, but you guys proved it did?
We've got a lot of positive feedback about the episode. I mean, again, short of actually going there and bringing back some of the hardware ourselves, it's you know, the best we could do is replicate all of the situations that are brought up and show that these all of the artifacts that were pointed out as indications of fakery are totally possible to have occur naturally in the moon environment. And you know, I don't know what else one could do. It's if you want to believe the Earth is made, or the moon's made out of cheese, then I'm not going to tell you that it isn't.
Then be my guest.
Exactly.